This is Michael Woodward, and this is episode 44 of the Jumblethink podcast.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Jumblethink podcast, a podcast focused on telling the stories of dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers. Along the way, we'll give you some tips and ideas of how you can make your big idea or dream a reality. Today's episode is another great episode. Our guest is Raj Daniels. On Monday's episode, we have Stephen Pettith. Stephen is a cool guy. He is a specialist in international architecture. He has also worked in the world of politics in Australia and so much other cool stuff. I can't wait to share that episode with you this Thursday. Looking for some more inspiration throughout your week? Go on over to Instagram, find us by searching for Jumblethink, and throughout the week we do some really cool stuff. Not only do we announce our upcoming episodes, but we also share some inspirational quotes, and every Friday we do our One Tip Friday, where I give you an actionable item that you can do to chase your dream and make your big idea become a reality. Just go on over to Instagram.com/Jumblethink. It would be great to be friends with you on Instagram. Now let's jump into this episode with Raj Daniels. We have yet another great guest for you today. His name is Raj Daniels. He is a blogger and business consultant. He's better known as the CEO and Vice President of Enthusiasm for Open Time. You may be wondering what Open Time's all about. Well, we'll talk about that and so much more in this episode. Can't wait for you to check it out. So let's join the conversation with Raj Daniels. Raj, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Michael, thank you so much for having me.
You are doing some cool stuff. Tell us a little bit about you and who you are.
First and foremost, I like to tell people that I'm husband to a beautiful, beautiful wife, and the lucky father of 3 wonderful daughters that I just absolutely adore. After that, entrepreneur, writer, startup evangelist, I guess serial entrepreneur, strategy consultant, and an overall lover of life.
Wow. Sounds like you're a busy guy.
You know, I am busy, but we're so fortunate. I mean, I am busy, but it's worth every minute and every moment.
You mentioned your 3 daughters, 4, 7, and 8. I have 2 daughters, so I can relate to the world of daughters and wives and all that kind of stuff. Wives singular for each of us, I'm sure. Yep. But tell us about how that's impacted your blog, because that's a pretty cool story.
I mentor MBA students here locally. I do some speaking in the startup community. I mentor entrepreneurs. And for the years, 2014, 2015, more and more as I was doing speaking and mentoring, I was being told that, you should really write a blog. You should really write a blog. And I was giving all kinds of excuses about, I don't have time. What would I write? Just nonsense, honestly. And the truth was, I was scared. What am I going to write, and who's going to read it, and what do I have to say? Imposter syndrome, if you will.
Yeah.
And so December of 2015, I heard the story again. Someone said you should write a blog, and I don't know what it was, but I guess the end of the year and the starting of a new year, I said, okay, fine, fair enough. I'm going to commit to writing a blog, but I'm going to give myself a very, very easy task. The commitment was this. I said, okay, Raj, talking to myself, third person. I said, okay, look, this is your commitment. You commit to writing 100 words 3 days a week. That's it. And I wake up relatively early. 4:30, 5 o'clock-ish. So I have the time carved out in the morning. I do my meditation, and then I get up and write. And the commitment was 100 words 3 times a week. So I started out the first week of January last year. And long story short, I just crossed 50,000 words in 215 blog posts. And that's just 100 words at a time.
Wow. That's crazy. It's really, really cool. I have your blog open in front of me, and we're going to talk a little bit about your company, Open Time, in a little bit. But first, I want to dive a little bit deeper into your blog. You mentioned the imposter syndrome. I think a lot of us struggle with that. Like, we're not going to measure up. We're not going to be able to live up to the expectation of who people think we are, or the skills that we actually have. Talk to us a little bit about your process of overcoming that, because you've been accomplished. So it's not like you don't have the skills or the wisdom to share with people, and yet you struggled with that too in creating this blog. So tell us a little bit about that.
I'll give you two answers to that question. I think first, it has to do with media. And what I mean by media is that when you watch a movie and you see somebody behaving in a particular way, or you see an image of something, or I was speaking to my wife recently, and we saw a picture of somebody's closet, and everything was perfectly lined up, just a perfect closet.
Yeah.
And in our mind, we know that they had stage hands and they had people come together in the photo shoot and the lighting. We logically we know all that, but all our mind captures is that one snapshot in time. Our mind registers that one snapshot in time, and then we compare our entire life and our being existence to those snapshots, to those vignettes, if you will. And I think that's where some of that struggle comes up with. When I see somebody speaking on stage, or speaking on TV, or presenting or writing, I don't know everything that went into it. All I see is that 1 30-second, 1 minute clip of whatever that is. And I think that has a lot, that plays into it a lot, where we don't see everyone's journey. We just catch these snapshots. And I think the second part of your question is about overcoming that imposter syndrome, correct?
Yeah.
And so what I decided to myself, I said, look, the pressure was this on me. Okay, who am I going to write? What am I going to write about? So I decided to use my daughters as my muse, as these are going to be messages to them, advice, ideas, thoughts that I have around particular subjects or things that I'm thinking about that I think might help them in their lives as they grow up. And like we said, they're quite young, so they don't read it yet. But I decided to write messages that I thought when they do get older and they decide they're having an issue or a challenge with something in life, perhaps they can go back and look at something I wrote and how I thought about that, and it'll help move them forward. And just doing that, day after day after day has brought me to where I am today regarding that.
I'm reading through your blog posts the last couple of days as I prepare for the episode. I try to make sure that I know as much as I can about the guest. And what stood out to me about your writing is that it addresses questions and struggles that I think most of us encounter. And it's really honest. And it asks questions that I think a lot of us feel like, am I the only one? Especially in the world of dreamers and entrepreneurs and business owners and innovators, that those questions, I think, are seated deep within us. And one of the things I love about your blog writing is simply that you're asking the questions that all of us are internalizing. You're bringing it to the forefront, and then you're giving solutions. You're giving some quotes. You're giving some wisdom there. And I think there's a lot of power in that.
I really appreciate it. And that's kind of like, when I'm writing, I'm having this conversation with my girls. And I'm just saying, I'm asking these questions to them, and then I'm trying to help them with the answers.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I'm just going to read an excerpt of your most recent post, because I think a lot of us can relate to this one. And it's titled "When Plans Fail." And you start out by saying, you've planned for the perfect weekend outdoor and it rains. Now what? You've planned the perfect trip and it turns out to be a disaster. Now what? You've planned the perfect date and then you got sick. Now what? You've planned to lose weight and you didn't. Now what? You've planned to retire early and you didn't. Now what? How do you respond to any of these scenarios? Since any one of these is entirely possible, should you stop planning? Planning is a skill and an art. It's something that you learn over time. Sometimes planning for contingencies is necessary and sometimes it's not. A pilot or a surgeon obviously needs more plan Bs than someone going for a walk. Planning allows you to dream, think, decide on how you're going to get where you want to go. However, your original plan will rarely be the one that works, and this is something you need to get used to. P.S. This post was inspired by the internet being down this morning, and that's why it's being posted later than usual. Just another example of having to change plans. I think that's something that, and that's just one post out of 22 pages of posts that you've posted. And I look at that and I just go, I think that's something we all struggle with. And yet that adventure of getting off the plan because the plan didn't work sometimes creates the most beautiful moments of life. Can you share maybe a story where you've had something come up that failed and you've been able to step past that?
I'll share a very personal story, but I'll go into the story. So I was about in my mid-20s, and we bought a real estate investment. It was a motel, essentially, and we put our life savings into it, and it failed miserably. Long story short, we had to go through a Chapter 13, Chapter 7. It was. I thought it was the end of days, the last thing I'd ever do. It was my money, my brother's money, my family money, and it was imagine being in your mid-20s and you're going to court and you're going through bankruptcy hearings and judges, et cetera, et cetera. And the irony is 6 months earlier, we were bringing in over $20,000 a month in cash.
Wow.
And, you just feel like a total failure. You feel like you screwed up. Not only did you lose your own money, you lost your family money. What are you going to say? How are you going to answer to people? You think you're the only one that's ever gone through this. You think you're a total fool. You think you're a total idiot. You think you messed up everything. I could go into the reason why it happened. It doesn't matter now. But I look back and I think to myself, that was, again, going back to that one snapshot in time and addressing the other part of planning. What I really want to evoke in people, and part of why I wrote that post is that I've come across so many people that have given up. They've literally given up. And I heard a phrase many years ago, and it said, dead at 40, buried at 60, right? Oh. Because the other 20 years of people's lives, they just gave up, right? And again, speaking back to my daughters, that blog post, I don't want them to ever give up. Where I am today, where you are today, this is not our end point. This is a continuum in the journey. Okay, this is not these last whatever years equals where you are. You're going to move on. So, I know it can be hard sometimes. Like I just mentioned, when we went through the bankruptcy, it was years and years of just a total mess. But I'm on the other side of it, and now when I'm doing my strategy consulting and I'm consulting with a client, I can tell him or her, well, I've experienced this, and one of the reasons I experienced this was that we relied too heavily on one particular customer, and when that customer went away, it caused us to go into bankruptcy. So don't get 25% of your revenue or greater from any one customer. Now I can give that advice to someone because I personally went through it.
And that builds an empathy and an understanding that doesn't happen unless you have that experience.
Absolutely.
Now tell us a little bit about the story of monkeys.
The monkey story. And if you I don't know if you speak Spanish or not, but on the bottom it says that this experiment never happened. But the monkey story is very, very interesting. The monkey story is a story about a monkey that's in a group of monkeys in a room, and there are bananas on the top of this pole, and the monkeys climb up to get bananas, and each time a monkey tries, they get an electric shock. And so after a while, none of the monkeys try to climb the pole. So what the researchers supposedly did, they introduced a new monkey into the group, one that had not experienced the electric shock. So this monkey goes to climb the pole, and even before he gets shocked, the other monkeys pull him down because they have some existing tribal knowledge that there's going to be an electric shock. Over time, the researchers replaced the entire group of monkeys with new monkeys, and none of the new monkeys even attempt to climb up the pole to get the bananas because they've been told by other people that if you do that, you'll get an electric shock.
Yeah. And
so, be careful about the myths and the legends and the stories that you latch onto and the ones you hear, because they're not always true.
So it's a really clever story, and it's found on your About Us page. If anyone wants to read it, they should definitely check it out there. It makes us think a little differently, and part of being a dreamer is thinking differently. What is the one thing that you mentioned that you wrote the blog? You write it as if you're writing messages that you would want your daughters to read one day. What's maybe one message to them that you'd want them to grab a hold of and really live to the fullest?
It's the same message I share. I'll give you two messages that I think just guide my life. And I tell all entrepreneurs and people I speak to regarding the same thing. Number one is that, and it sounds corny and it sounds cliche, don't give up. Don't give up, because whatever you're pursuing will almost always take longer than you expect. Whatever you're pursuing. So don't give up. Keep believing, keep moving forward, keep doing something, even if it's the smallest thing, like we talked about earlier, even just writing it down or making a phone call or researching. Just keep doing it. Just keep don't give up. Don't give up. Don't give up. And the other thing that I like to tell people is that always, always, always make time for people. People are going to be the most important things in your life. Nothing else is going to mean more to you than people. And people could mean family, it could mean friends, it could mean coworkers, but make time for people.
Why is it that we so often, especially in the business world, forget that people are the bloodline of what we're doing, whether it's employees, whether it's our audience, our customers? How come that gets lost in the mix so often?
So I think the last 15 years has been a big tell in that story. And what I mean is that since the rise of social media, um, you know, how many Facebook friends do you have? How many LinkedIn connections do you have? How many Twitter followers do you have? How many Snapchat followers? How many people? And these are all electronic tokens that, essentially in the grand scheme of things, don't mean anything. They
Right.
just don't mean anything. I mean, when I say people, I mean face to face, belly to belly, ear to ear. And to answer your question, I think we're coming back to that. And I'll use something as simple as Google search results. So I have a few companies here locally that I speak to. They're phenomenal in SEO search, and they say that the newest trend, or one of the trends right now they're seeing on Google, is what they're calling hyper-local search. So imagine, if you will, a plumber in Dallas, Texas. So that's a hyper-local search, because once again, they realize that they can't battle in the rest of the world, and they can't battle in the entire landscape. They have to come back because, again, their business is being taken place locally. So I think social media, I think a lot of us got lost in social media, and I think we're suffering from some of those repercussions today. And I'm not saying that social media is going away. I'm saying that I think it's going to play a less prevalent piece in people's lives than they thought it was.
Well, and it's coming back to that place of realizing that we really need real intimacy instead of a false sense of intimacy through knowledge, consuming people as data instead of as people.
Absolutely right. Absolutely. I mean, these are all platforms that have no fiduciary duty to the users. The fiduciary duty lies with the brands and the people paying them to run the ads and the sponsorship. And when I hear people complain about social media, I tell them that, look, you willingly give yourself and your information over. They don't have any agency towards you.
Right. Absolutely. There's no. You're just a commodity at that point. Unfortunately, you mentioned transitioning from a little bit from your blog into your mentoring and your seminars. You have a passion for strategy and vision building. You do personal development and growth seminars for teens. You mentor MBA students in entrepreneur camps. Mentoring is becoming such a significant thing in our culture. People really looking for, I guess it's a continuation of what you mentioned before, that relationship.
Absolutely. And we can use the word mentoring, advising, counseling, many words for it's a big umbrella. Mentoring, I think, you can mentor me, I can mentor you. It's a two-way street. I can learn from you, you can learn from me. And I think that, the research is now showing that people ultimately want fulfillment in their lives. I don't know if you follow the work of Simon Sinek, but he talks about the why.
Yeah.
And he talks about people want fulfillment. And one of the terms that's become very popular in today's conscious capitalism movement is what they call skills-based volunteering. And so skills-based volunteering is this. Like, I know, let's say, Michael, you're phenomenal with numbers. You're a great CFO. And, you work 40 hours a week right now doing what you do. But what if you had the opportunity, Michael, to spend 1 hour a week mentoring someone using your skill set of numbers and finance and helping them? That would provide you that little bit of fulfillment that would improve your overall well-being, and not only make you feel better, but make you more productive at work and make you an overall happier individual.
I think that's a very powerful thing. If such a small shift can change, that fulfillment value, I think that's something that more people really need to do.
I agree with you. Make time for people.
Now let's dive a little bit deeper into this. In the last couple of weeks, we've had various people from various spaces, one of them being really well known on Quora as a millennial writer. He is a millennial. We've had other people on here who work a lot with young adults. You mentioned that you mentor and that you're working with MBA students. You're working with that millennial generation. What are you seeing in that space?
I'm seeing wonderful people that are being put in a box. So I'll give you a couple of examples. Okay, one of my mentees goes through 4 interviews, gets his laptop computer, he gets told what to do, go sink or swim. That's it.
Wow.
And he's telling me, Raj, I mean, I'm here 6 months, but I don't want to be here anymore. It's not what I thought it was going to be. It's not what they told me it was going to be. I need more meaning in my life. And I've heard a lot of, negative talk about millennials. And what I've told, in fact, just recently, just last week, I was telling somebody, I said, look, millennials did not spontaneously combust. They didn't just show up.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Millennials are the product of the generations that preceded them. They have seen their parents go through struggles. They have seen, okay, let's take the last 15, 16 years. They've seen their parents' jobs get outsourced. They've seen their parents get laid off. They've seen loyalty from the companies to their parents disappear. They've seen pensions disappear. They've seen the greatest depression that they've ever heard of. They've gone through all this and experienced all this. Now, what are they thinking? They're thinking, why should we turn over our lives and our loyalties to any one of these large corporations? I want to live my life now. I don't want to put it off for 20, 30, 40, 50 years in the hopes and the promise that I'll get something at the end of that when I went through and seeing my parents and our lives fall apart when it didn't happen. So how can you start commanding or expecting loyalty from a generation of people, individuals that saw no loyalty to their loved ones?
Well, I think it comes back to what you mentioned before. We've got to start relating with people better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, and the millennials have a double-edged sword, right? They were the ones that were 10, 11, 12 years old when these social media platforms came out. And so what I've seen last 15 years, they've been creating these relationships, these virtual relationships. But the statistic came out again last week. 80% of jobs today are still found through word of mouth. Now, if all you've been used to is these virtual relationships, talking to people online, talking to people with your thumbs, talking to people behind screens, and now you go into the workplace, or now you're trying to find a job, and you're submitting your resume through a robo resume that's looking for keywords, and you don't know how to network and speak to people and engage with people, you're challenged by a struggle with it. Again, you can't blame that individual. They're just a product of this system that we've been part of.
Yeah. I mean, it's saying, hey, the problem is these people, instead of looking at exactly what you said, what caused these people, these millennials, to be who they are. And I think actually there's a lot of beauty and potential for this millennial generation to do crazy things in the worlds of business education, so many spheres, but they need people to come beside them and mentor and love and guide them through this process. I think it's beautiful that they want to live for today because they don't want to be in the situation their parents are, where the pensions, the retirement funds, all of those have dried up. I think that's really cool because it means that they have the most potential to be all in.
Absolutely. I mean, I think of it this way. Look, you've got the opportunity here, Mr. Big Corporation, you've got the opportunity here to hire somebody that wants fulfillment out of their life. You've got the opportunity to have someone as part of your company that wants fulfillment out of life, and you have the ability to provide that fulfillment. Why wouldn't you? You've got a genius individual, super smart individual, and all they're saying is that, look, we'll give you 60% of my time, 70% of my time, 80% of my time. But, maybe perhaps 10%, 20%, find a way for me to be more fulfilled. Let's take the paycheck conversation off the table. Let's take the job conversation off the table, and let's dig a little deeper and say, Michael, what do you love to do? Who do you want to be around? What changes do you want to make in this world, and how can we do it together? And that's why I'm a big fan of this conscious capitalism movement.
Well, talk a little bit about this conscious capitalist movement, because I know that I'm not super aware of it, and probably some of our listeners aren't either. So can you explain what it is and what that looks like?
So I'm not an expert on it, but I'll tell you briefly my understanding and why I love it. They talk about double bottom line, and the double bottom line essentially is you can make money while doing good.
Okay.
So think of Tom's Shoes, for example, right?
Yeah, great company.
Buy one, give one away. Here locally, there's a company called Tango Tab. Tango Tab is an application on your phone. Every time you book a meal or buy a meal through Tango Tab, they donate a meal, and they've donated millions of meals. So just it's that model of, you know what? We will use your money. We will be good stewards of your money. Yes, we will also appease and keep our shareholders and stakeholders happy, but we will also use a portion of the profits to do good.
Well, it sounds like there's a lot of philanthropic aspects of it, saying that not only are we going to be fiscally responsible, but we're also going to be socially responsible as a business.
Absolutely, and you know, Michael, we are. I mean, it's incumbent on us as a community, as a society, as a whole, to help, you know, be beyond our reach, right? I mean, I again, my girls are very young, but we try to tell them, you know, we donate regularly. You know, if there's lightly worn clothing, you know, we try to package it up and we give it away. You know, there are little things that we do, but we try to put this language into them from now. I don't know how old your girls are, but, you know, we want this language to be part of what they learn as they grow up. And I think that if employers can meet these needs of the millennials, I think it makes for a great relationship.
I think that's great insight. Now let's jump into talking a little bit about the business that you're the CEO of, Open Time. What is it?
Open Time is a vision and a mission. You talked about dreamer. I'm a dreamer.
Yeah.
Open Time is all about making time for people. So at its core, Open Time is a scheduling application. But the idea behind Open Time, the thought behind Open Time is this. Everybody in a community has some open time, some availability in their schedule. So, you know, if you're part of an association, you join the association because you wanted to be around like-minded individuals. And so you might attend a monthly meeting and go there. You know, maybe some of the members will be there, some won't. But what about in between those meetings? What about in between those quarterly meetings? What if you can meet people or know when people are available to meet? So Open Time at its core allows an individual to share their open time or availability with members of a community, organization, group, network, any community.
It's really cool. So, you know, you mentioned that at its core, it's a scheduling tool, but it's socially aware. What are the benefits for someone coming in to use this? How is it going to affect their life, and how is it going to affect those around them?
So I'll tell you a couple of different benefits. First of all, 93% of people associate with being shy. And what that means is that people are hesitant, apprehensive to go up to someone and say, hey, would you mind grabbing a cup of coffee with me? Would you mind, you know, helping me with this problem I'm having? People are reticent to do so. And so the way we've designed the platform is that individuals, once they share their availability, like let's say tomorrow morning, you know, between 10 and 12, I make myself available to a particular community, that barrier of someone having to ask me if I'm available is removed. Because I've already said, I'm sharing my time with anyone from the community. Come talk to me about anything you want to talk to. And so that barrier of that fear, that concern of rejection, we're removing that. Secondly, we found that people are more than willing to do this. People are happy to give an hour of their time to an organization, to a community they're passionate about. So think about entrepreneur centers, think about colleges, think about enterprise. You know, people are happy to do so as long as it's on their terms. And so we allow them to do it on their terms. They don't need to share their entire schedule. They don't share their entire calendar. They just share that one small portion of time that they want to give back, their open time.
What is the benefit to the community and to the person giving this time? How is it a win-win for both, and what are they getting out of it?
So great question. Do you follow the work of Seth Godin?
Yeah.
So Seth Godin wrote a great book called Tribes.
Yep.
And in it, he talks about community needs three things in order to survive. Now, I'm using community as an overarching term, but you can think of an enterprise, a church, a school, entrepreneur center. These are all communities that we're part of. Okay.
Yeah.
So community needs three things, he said. Community needs leadership. So let's say you're the leader of an association. It needs an idea to come together around. So let's say that idea is entrepreneurship. And the third thing community needs in order to survive and thrive is the ability for the members to connect. That's the pillar that we're focused on. So not only connect at that single opportunity of that event, but continue to connect at will. So again, going back to the point of being able to share. Now, you talked about the benefit to the individual. You know, I've been doing this for 2 years, 2.5 years now, and I've met one person that said to me, Raj, I don't want to share any of my time. Because when I ask people, would you be willing to share an hour of your time a month to an association or community that you're involved in that means a lot to you? Without fail, they all say absolutely, because I'm speaking to them about what interests them already.
Yeah.
And that's that fulfillment piece.
I love that. You need leadership, an idea, and a way to connect. And this can solve all three of those in some facets, which is really cool.
Appreciate it.
Where do you want to take what you're doing with Open Time? What's the next thing you see it doing? How do you see it affecting community on a larger scale, whether that's at a micro level of a church or government, schools, everything like that? Where do you really want to see it go?
So I want to see Open Time move eventually into enterprise. And what I mean by that is that, and have you ever worked for a large organization, large company?
I've had lots of clients that are large organizations. I've worked with medium-sized organizations. So yeah.
Perfect. So, you know, for the past 20, 25 years, people in large companies and organizations have got used to the shared calendar.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say any brands or companies, just let's say shared calendar. And on a shared calendar, and this is all from research that I've been doing, the behavior is this, is that, look, if your boss puts a meeting on your shared open calendar, you will more than likely accept. If your subordinate or peer puts a meeting on your calendar, depending on how your day is going, you may or may not. But I've never seen anyone that's been elated to have another meeting put in their calendar.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because there's no sense of control over it. People are doing things to you. It's a very passive behavior. Your calendar is open, your coworkers see it, they do things to it. Okay? I want to position Open Time at the other end of that spectrum. And what I mean by that is that, you know, earlier we talked about skills-based volunteering, okay?
Yeah.
I want to position Open Time to where when you, Michael, say, I'm making myself available to my work community, it's because you want to share, and someone sees that. I want to position Open Time where leadership in a company says, you know, I'm Mr. VP Raj, and I'm going to say Friday morning from 10 to 12 is my open time to anyone in the company to talk to me about the company vision, their dog, regardless of what it is. I want to create that piece, that movement of where, you know, yes, we're a company, yes, we're about making money, yes, we're about everything else, but you know what? We, as part of our core, as part of our culture, we make time for each other. That's where I want to take Open Time to.
I think it's right on the market with what I think needs to happen with more corporations and enterprise level organizations, where, you know, having that sense of belonging, but also control over where you pour your resources into it's a powerful thing.
And you know, and let's talk dollars and cents for a minute.
Yeah.
So the mentee I spoke to you about the other day, you know, he's with this company for 6 months. He's not feeling quote unquote wanted or needed. Yes, he's doing his job. He's getting his paycheck. You know, companies are struggling with attrition and churn, especially amongst the millennials. And the numbers that I've heard, this is $1 billion problem. Okay.
Right.
You know, if you hire someone for $100,000 a year, it costs you $150,000 in lost productivity and wages and benefits to keep that person on board. Now, if that person doesn't become part of the culture or part of that company within the year and they quit, essentially you've lost that money. You have to go through a rehiring. What we're saying, you know what, use something like Open Time, or use Open Time to truncate that time. Why not, when the person comes on board, decide, have a policy, create, you know, a schedule in the company where, once a month, this person meets with a mentor, a VP, a C-level executive, and make them part of the company, truncate that time, accelerate the culture curve, essentially, with this individual.
Yeah, I think that's really, really good. And I know that organizations have tried different ways, the open workspace where no one has a room, and they're finding that that's not been super beneficial because it hurts productivity. And
absolutely.
And then, by opening up seminars with leadership and all that kind of stuff, but that doesn't give you the personal touch that you need, that one-on-one engagement. And this kind of fills that middle area where it's like, it gives an open forum at the control of the individual to engage at the level that they want to engage and get that ownership, get that touch, get that personal involvement that's so missing in the corporate world right now.
And, so I was part of a large organization, and I had a counselor, and literally everyone would talk to their counselor once a year, the week before bonus.
Oh, wow. Let's jump into some rapid fire questions now. The first question I have is, let's say you're sitting with a coworker or that MBA student, or maybe one of those teens in one of those seminars, or anyone else that has an idea or a dream, and they are so passionate about it. They're filled with excitement for their idea, but they have no idea where to start. What are some practical steps that you would encourage them to take to move their dream forward?
The first thing I would tell them is to write it down. Do an entire, brain dump on paper. If they don't want to write it by freehand, get on a computer, but just write the entire thing out. I found through mentoring, through advising, I found that I can predict the failure rate on action just by people not writing down or writing something down. Meaning that I will give them homework. I will say, look, come back to me next Friday with your idea written out. And the ones that come back with it written out are the ones that succeed.
Wow.
The ones that come back to me and say I'm stuck, even they have a greater chance of succeeding. The ones that didn't do anything, it's just going to stay in their head.
That's a great piece of advice. I think you're the first guest that's given that recommendation to write it down. We've had a lot of other things, and I think that's a great recommendation people can take. Now, tell us, let me kind of phrase it this way. You are a person who has worked in different facets of the world. You've been a CEO, you've been a coach and a consultant, you work with mentoring. You see the world quite a bit from different angles, from different spaces in the world. What's one change you want to see in the world around you?
I want to see people step away from their technology and make time for people. I want to see them put their phones down for an hour, step away from the computers for an hour, and just make time for other people, make time for themselves. Make time for themselves. I have this screensaver on my phone that I just designed myself in PowerPoint. And essentially, when I look at it, it says away and towards. And it's towards my goals and away from my goals. And is the reason I'm opening my phone, is that going to move me towards my goals, away from my goals? And I tell people all the time, just put it down, re-engage with people, re-engage with nature. Technology is great. I love technology. I'm doing what I'm doing. It's in technology. I think technology is phenomenal. But there's the adage about when the master became the slave, right? Technology. And so I just feel like it's too much now.
I can completely relate to that. You told a story before we jumped on to the actual interview about your smartwatch.
Smartwatch, yes.
Since you brought up the technology piece about untethering, which I think is such a significant missing piece of the puzzle, can you tell that story about your smartwatch?
Sure. So a lot of people around me, especially in the tech space, were getting smartwatches. They were getting the Apple Watch, the Samsung Watch, and the conversation was around, now I don't have to take my phone out of my pocket. But what I noticed more and more when I was going into meetings with people with smartwatches is that when the way they would sit, the face of their watch would face me. And so if they got a text message or a call coming in, I would see their screen light up. So I was feeling distracted by their phone, by their watches. And I thought to myself, I want a wristwatch because I don't want to take my phone out of my pocket. So I went out and bought myself a Mickey Mouse watch.
I love it.
And I tell people now it's my smartwatch, and people kind of giggle. And I say, literally, it's my smartwatch. I said, look, I'll give you 3 reasons why it's my smartwatch. Number 1, it tells me the time. I don't have to take my phone out of my pocket. So it's wonderful, right?
Yeah.
Number 2, and trust me, buy one and try this, it makes for a phenomenal conversation piece. When you're sitting in a room of people and you're the guy with the Mickey Mouse watch, people are asking why.
That's cool.
And the third reason is because it's a motivational piece for me. And what I mean by that is that, look, every time I look at my watch, I'm reminded what one man and a pencil created. What one man and a pencil created, I'm reminded every single time. And so, I have every single resource that I need to create my vision, my dream, if I just look at my watch.
That's so good. Which segues into the next question really well. Who or what inspires you?
I'm inspired by all kinds of things. I'm a voracious reader, figures from history. It's dangerous to put people on pedestals.
Yeah.
Last year I read the Benjamin Franklin biography. It's a really big book. It's a Walter Isaacson book. It's a great book. But as I read through it, and as I saw, the struggles or the challenges he had with his family and with his kids and with his wife and living overseas for such a long time, as I mentioned earlier, we started the podcast. I love my wife. I love my daughters. I wouldn't leave here, if I had the choice ever. And, so he's a brilliant man and he created brilliant things, but I love my family and I would not trade that off. And so I think we have to be very careful about who we put on pedestals. But I'm inspired by a lot. I'm inspired by art. On the front of my phone, we talked about phones earlier. One of the apps that I keep front and center on my phone is it's the art Wikipedia. I like looking at art. My bookshelves are covered with drawings that my children do. I'm inspired by them. I'm inspired by people around me. I'm inspired by the 75-year-old or 77-year-old gentleman I spoke to yesterday, who's a multimillionaire, retired at 2002, has been retired for 15 years, and decided to start driving Uber this year because he was curious about what is Uber, and it gets him out of the house and he doesn't fight with his wife.
That's cool. That's a great story.
I'm inspired by a 77-year-old gentleman I met early this year who told me about his 103-year-old father who drove to their meeting and showed everyone his new iPhone 7 and his new Apple Watch.
Wow.
And his Bluetooth headphones that connect to his watch.
That's so cool. That's so
cool. I'm inspired by all, we can be inspired by, I have a tree in my study that I'm inspired by. It's a beautiful tree, and as it grows, I've been nurturing it for 15 years, and I've seen it grow from nothing to 12 feet tall.
Wow.
So I draw inspiration from everywhere.
You mentioned that one of the things that inspires you is reading and watching things. What are you reading and watching right now?
So right now I'm reading Tim Ferriss's Tools of Titans.
Yeah, great new book out.
It's a great new book. There are not many things that I would sit through for an hour or two, but his interviews are just phenomenal. And the people that he has on, just the interest levels are, they're amazing what people do. I tell my wife all the time, I said, if I can do, again, 1/4 or 1/2 of what I hear some of these people do and talk about, it's just phenomenal.
Wow.
So that's one of the books I'm reading right now. I'm also reading a book called Upstart. It's about the story of Airbnb and Uber.
Yeah.
And so, in the startup space, trying to, glean some knowledge from there.
It's really, really cool. You mentioned early on you have 3 daughters. You're ecstatic about your family. Love your wife, love your kids. What do you want your legacy to be?
I think I boiled it down to something very simple. I think it was a good person. I tell people all the time that, we can leave all the material things we want. We can leave them money. We can leave them houses, cars. I want my reputation. I want my reputation when my girls go out in the world and people say, your father helped this person. Your father was a good person. That's what I want my legacy to be. It's that simple.
That's really good. we've talked a lot about what you're doing, whether it's through your blog, whether it's through the mentoring, whether it's through open time. How can someone connect with you?
I am on social on Twitter, Raj_Daniels. They can go to my blog, rajdaniels.com. They can email me, raj.daniels@opentimeapp.com. Feel free to reach out. Happy to talk to everybody, anybody.
I always end every episode with this question. It's my favorite question to ask everyone, and anyone that listens to this podcast has heard me say that 30 some odd times, 40 some odd times now. The question's this: what is one dream you are still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
This sounds strange, but I always dream about different products. And I just discussed this one the other day, and it's been plaguing me for a while. And maybe I'll get the opportunity to work on it. I want to find a way where we extract less resources from the earth. And this one in particular is around metal, iron, and steel. And I want to find a way to, I'm going to just share the dream with you off the top of my head, Michael.
Yeah.
I want to find a way to create signage using light.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is that imagine a stop sign that didn't have the metal pole and the metal sign and the paint, everything, but was just a beam of light that came out of the ground and you could just see it. Imagine like a hologram of a stop sign.
Yeah.
That's what I envision one day. Imagine how much metal we'll be saving.
It's really cool. It's an idea that I've never heard or thought about before. I love it.
So that's I would love to work on that problem one day.
That's really cool. Raj, it has been really fun to chat with you. I love your worldview. I love that you're a dreamer. Thanks for taking time out and being on the podcast.
Michael, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the wonderful questions.
Once again, I want to thank today's guest, Raj Daniels, CEO and Vice President of Enthusiasm for Open Time, also a blogger and a business consultant doing really, really cool stuff. You can swing on over to jumblethink.com, and when you're there, you can find links on the episode notes to how you can connect up with Raj. On Monday's episode, we have yet another incredible guest. His name is Stephen Pettit. He is an international architect. What he does is he helps businesses go from being a regional or national business to crossing international borders, expanding their business so much further. It's a really cool episode, and we talk about a lot of interesting stuff that you will find really cool. Do you have a big idea or a dream and you simply don't know where to start? The Jumblethink team is here to help you. Drop us an email, hello@jumblethink.com, and we will help you on your journey to chase your dream and create the world you want to live in. Whether it's a simple question or you want to dive deep into some coaching, we're here. Just reach out. We'd love to help you. Once again, I want to thank today's guest, Raj Daniels, for taking time out to share his story, his ideas, and what's going on in his world. I hope it's impacted you, and I hope that this episode has given you some great ideas and resources that you can apply to your big idea and dream. Thanks again for listening, and go out there and create the world you want to live in.
Vous êtes une autre personne. Les mères de famille, les enfants peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant. Dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps, vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.